questions.
All right. So you had a tweet about a warrior who sees only challenges, and you also described a man who only saw blessings and curses. And I asked you in a message, and we'd bring it up now. I would assume that a man who sees blessing and curses is attaching himself and giving values to these things, these events in life, whereas a man who only sees challenges doesn't have these preferences. He sees only what needs to be done and what obstacle may stand in his way.
Yeah, correct. So the distinction between an ordinary man and a warrior in the language of Don Juan and his teacher, what is it, Genaro Flores, both of them teachers of Carlos Castañeda. An ordinary man sees blessings and triumph and disaster, blessings and curses, whereas a warrior sees challenges, right? Because he's trying to perfect his will, his intent, his self mastery of himself. And so it's just a challenge. And just if you just spend any time looking around, you'll see that how people handle triumph or victory or success that's more often than not the cause of their downfall than the opposite. People can't handle success very well as often as they can't handle failure very well. You'll see this as you go through life. So you have to be able to handle both. I think it was Mark Twain. Triumph or disaster, I'll treat both imposters just the same. Something like that.
Yeah. I guess as a follow-up, you said that a warrior sees things kind of in this way where he's looking to develop his will, his intent.
His unbending intent, yes. His unbending intent.
His unbending intent.
Yeah.
And I guess this kind of speaks to the seriousness of what's at stake here.
Your life is at stake.
I bring this up because of this other tweet from Don that you posted that was quoted, Don Juan Mateus, and it reads, "For me, the world is stupendous, awesome, mysterious, unfathomable. My interest has been to convince you that you must assume responsibility for being in this marvelous world. I want to convince you that you must learn to make every act count." When I read this, it just reminded me of unbending intent and kind of, you've said it before, what's at stake here and what this is about. And I guess I say that to go into a new question. And with...
Okay, here we go. Question.
This question is about, with the seriousness of what's at stake, I'm having myself grappling with the idea of the real and, what's not real.
Seriousness. Nobody said anything about seriousness, right? I mean, it's a joy, right? Yeah, you could say it's serious. You could say it's not serious. That doesn't matter. What's important is that you discover who you are, what you are, where you're from, and where you're going in this marvelous world, right? But keep going.
Yeah, and wanting to be present with this marvelous world in my meditation, I'm curious about what seems like this almost paradoxical effect where I'm able to meditate and still my mind and I either launch off into a contemplation, but sometimes I'm going to walk back to my house from the park and the colors are a little more vibrant, right? Things appear more lively. And I say paradoxical because it makes things appear more dreamlike. And I know we talk about that, life is like a dream.
No, not life is like a dream. That's row, row, row your boat. Row, row, row your boat. Life is like a dream. Well, okay. Actually, you could say it's like a dream, or you could just say it's a dream. It's a dream. The manifest reality is not available to us through our five senses. That's a consensus among serious scientists in neurobiology, physics, whatever. I don't think you can really deny that seriously anymore in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So whether you want to call it a dream, you want to call it Maya, whether you call it illusion, whether you want to call it, artifacts of our brain, the way our brains are constructed, whether you want to call it just a segment of reality that we're privy to. I mean, you could do it any way you want, but in any case, it's not the reality that we used to think it was. Oh my gosh, I don't have the microphone in. Give me 1 second here. Maybe I can. But let's keep going.
All right. What is it about stilling your mind that enhances this dreamlike quality to my perception?
You don't need to enhance the dreamlike quality. You don't have to enhance reality. You need to clarify perception. You need to. So the question of thought is one that has plagued humanity for a while now. And thoughts, so we could talk about what thoughts are. We could talk about where thoughts come from. We could talk about thoughts that are adaptive or maladaptive. But what it does in our contemporary life is it blocks us from being present, right? Thoughts are always about something else. Thoughts kind of take your attention away from what's here right now. Thoughts are a problem for many people because they live in their thoughts, and because we speak with words and our thoughts are in words, there's just a big mitote, big fog of all these thoughts running around, and so people can't calm down or settle down enough to see clearly what's right here in front of them. Something along those lines. Follow up?
Yeah. No, so there's a difference here in the words even. Enhancing perception versus clarifying perception.
Yeah. You don't need to enhance. Reality does not need enhancing.
Yeah, I see that, and I can understand that.
The lens needs cleansing, right? Enhancing. Reality doesn't need enhancing. The lens through which we look at reality needs cleansing, and that's why the Buddhists are always talking about polishing the mirror, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Keep going.
So I guess this would be, I guess I'll follow up with the idea of thoughts. So I was actually talking to my mom about this, and I where do thoughts come from? And her and I talked about how, many of the thoughts that she had and I had were kind of the circumstances we were born into. And I bring this up to ask, are much of our thoughts already chosen for us before we're born?
That's an interesting question, and it's phrased in an interesting manner. What do you mean? Give me an example. Maybe I could be more clear about that. If I told you where thoughts come from, you wouldn't believe me, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's something you need to discover for yourself. Okay?
Yeah, I guess I mentioned...
Now, proximally, of course, thoughts come from our friends, from the media, from our schools, from our parents, from what we read and what we see, right? But that's more proximal. I'm talking about where do thoughts come from in general, right? But that's not what you were asking about, so let's go to what you were asking about. You see, were you born to have some thoughts? Or something like that?
Kind of like a causal connection between where you're born and what you're born into and the subsequent thoughts you're going to have in your life.
I don't know about that. Some people are born and then they're put in a little basket and they're sailed down the river like Moses, right?
Yes.
So was he born to have those thoughts, or was he born to have other thoughts? I mean, it's too easy to transport an infant or a fetus from one part of the world to another, at the time of birth, and then have another whole other different set of thoughts at that level, right?
Yeah.
Now, were we born to have thoughts? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I would say, to a large extent, we have this whole cortex translating something and making thoughts out of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that must be because of the utility.
The medial frontal, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then of course the language over here, as you know, as you know all these things. Yeah. Now my brain's falling apart. Uh-oh. Okay, keep going.
I guess this would go into a new question, and this is kind of actually a line from the Flower Ornament Scripture.
Oh, I love those. Go ahead.
All right. So this is from the chapter Eulogies in the Palace of the Suyama Heaven.
All right.
And this is one of the verses that the enlightening being forest of energy said to Buddha.
Okay, read it slowly so everybody can get it. It can be kind of unnerving in the beginning. Yeah. Sometimes, depending. Let's go.
Just as the future has not the marks of the past, so also do all things not have any marks at all. Just as the signs of birth and death are all unreal, so also are all things void of intrinsic nature.
Yeah.
And I mentioned these two lines. The first one.
How many lines are around them, just so people get an idea?
Here, it's... so there are 8 lines.
Okay, and then how many lines around those 8 lines?
4 each.
Okay, then how many pages around those pages?
This is, see, it's on a PDF here.
Oh, I get the book if you can. There's about 1,600 pages, right, of sutra. So we're taking out a little fragment, and the psychological effect occurs when you immerse yourself in the sutra, and then the impact of it changes, and it's much more powerful, and more importantly, much more effective in transmuting the consciousness. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So just here, I'll repeat it. Just as the future has not the marks of the past, so also do all things not have any marks at all. So at the beginning, it's referencing kind of how the past is tied to the circumstances of the past, and that has no mark on the future, because
where does the past exist?
Just in my mind.
Does it really exist in your mind, or do you just have a little mini version of the past in your mind?
Yeah, I have a
and
mini version.
Also that what you're referring to is in the present, right?
Yeah.
So the past, there's no place for the past to exist in if logically, rationally speaking. We just imagine that it must be, right?
Yeah. Okay. We imagine that the past must be.
Yeah. Where would it exist? Tell me.
I mean, yeah, just
in the block universe, it'd be a slice of bread over here in the block universe, right? But the block universe is totally imagined, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's keep going. I don't want people to get confused. This is more like, we'll do this in fun, more like lightly, okay? Because people can get all twisted up here. And it's out of order a bit, because you have to understand the lack of inherent existence requires a pretty solid understanding of emptiness, right? And we're jumping over a bunch of steps here. Now we're talking about the tracklessness of the past and the future and all that other stuff. So keep going though. It's fun.
Yes. And so just as the future has not the marks of the past, so also do all things not have any marks at all. Is this referencing
where's the future? Where does the future exist?
The future, I mean, the future is just a projection of the prefrontal cortex, right?
Yeah, it's close enough for now. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's
so where do projections of the prefrontal cortex? Where do projections of the prefrontal cortex exist?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I mean,
Right.
we can
So it's
point
a
to certain
contemplation.
things
This
that
is a
line up.
a sutra for contemplation. And with sutra, this is like taking a beautiful song. It's like taking A Day in the Life by the Beatles. You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
And just taking one line out of it. You might get something, right? How many holes are in the Royal Albert Hall, right? But you're not going to get the effect of the whole song, right?
Yeah.
Or if you took one line of "Hey Ya," by Outkast, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to get that impact of the song. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So these
It's
these
not
are
the
like
same.
more like songs than they are like poems. Or like they're very beautiful poetry. Also, so keep going. I'm sorry I keep interrupted you, but this is brand new to
No.
many people. Keep going.
Yeah. Um, so given the fact that a lot of people are hearing about this for the first time, and pointing to the psychoactive nature of reading it, because I was doing some long form reading of it throughout the past couple nights, and right away I noticed that this had some kind of magnetism to it.
Mm-hmm.
You're reading something
Yes.
that has
Power.
something to it.
Power.
It has power.
Yeah, power to transmute consciousness.
And I guess this is my next question.
Before you go there, by all means, get the book if at all possible, right? The price goes up and down, right? But you can usually get it. I mean, and I'm not going to say it's inexpensive. As a matter of fact, it is kind of expensive for most people right now, but it's worth it. You'll have it all your life, and it beats a TV, and it's a lot cheaper than a TV, large screen TV. Put it that way. Okay, so all right. Question, or do you want to comment some more?
Question.
Okay.
Question.
Question.
Is the Bodhisattva different from the monk in how they live? In reading the Flower Ornament Scripture, it mentions the Bodhisattva, and it mentions how the Bodhisattva is living in this non-dual way, like in the world but not of the world, to kind of take a phrase from another tradition. And is that different from how a monk lives?
Don't monks kind of live in isolation from the world?
Right. They live in isolation, and they kind of do kind of obscure practices that your everyday person wouldn't do. So,
okay. Where do bodhisattvas live? Bodhisattva means enlightening being, a being that enlightens, right?
Yeah.
And one of the great things about this, the translation of this sutra, is it's in English. They don't use a bunch of Sanskrit or other jargon, right? A minimum of jargon's used. So where do bodhisattvas live?
They live in all realms.
There you go. Okay. And so monks, I would, language changes, but in current language, I'd say that a monk is someone who appears very concrete. Lives in a particular place, wears a certain habit, makes some nice liqueur, maybe, some Benedictine or something, and very nice, serious people, and we owe them a huge amount because they're the people who translate and hold our knowledge. I was reading about in the 6th century, without the monks there to hold on to what we had of Roman culture and civilization, a lot of that was Greek too. Without them and the Arabs, God knows where we'd be, right? In terms of the preservation of knowledge. So they serve many, many functions. And bodhisattvas, so there's bodhisattvas in the concrete, and then there's bodhisattvas in the terms of this scripture, right? And here there's clouds of bodhisattvas, billions of bodhisattvas. There's universes of bodhisattvas. And they're all available, right, to help. So that's a nice thought. And it's a useful thought. It's a powerful thought. And it's a different kind of software to run when you have literally, oceans of bodhisattvas in the universe, right? Mm-hmm. Don't get me started on it because you can keep going for a long time. But okay, so I'd say that's the difference in current communication, right?
Yeah. Something about the fact that Bodhisattvas or there's an infinite number of Buddhas, and this lends itself to every atom in the universe, where every atom is kind of has access to the knowledge of the Buddha. Have you heard about this before, this kind of concept?
What happens if we take one atom out of this universe?
Oh, we don't know. Maybe it makes some kind of weird
It's
vacuum,
unthinkable.
some
It's
kind of weird-
unthinkable. It's unthinkable.
Yeah.
I mean, where would we put it, right?
Mhm.
And so everything is literally. Are you familiar with the Net of Indra?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Net of Indra is this visualized net with an infinite array of these spider web type structures throughout the universe. And at the intersection of every fiber, there's a multifaceted diamond, right? And so in this net, we can start to visualize the interpenetration of all that exists, right? So anything that happens on one facet of one diamond is reflected on every diamond. And so it is throughout the universe. So you can literally not even pull out a whisker without it being reflected throughout the universe. And a bit of reflection on the structure of our universe shows how true that is, right? Everything is totally interdependent and interpenetrates. And these are difficult concepts. They're easy concepts to say, but they're difficult to get to penetrate into the bones, into the marrow, as the Zen people put it. And so that's what this sutra is really good for. And so, I'm sorry, I lost you. I just want to introduce people to the idea that a sutra can help your cognitive capacity expand to the point to where you can understand these things so deeply that they become part of your new operating system, which is far more adaptive than the one we're currently using in the modern West, for the most part. So now going back to your question.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we were just discussing the web of Indra.
Net of Indra.
The net of Indra.
Mm-hmm.
I guess as a follow-up on that, I messaged you before where I was contemplating the net of Indra, and I had these feelings of energy, power, I don't know, something just kind of rumbling come up to the head, and it forces my eyes open. Have you had any experience with people commenting with an experience like this, or
people have all kinds of extraordinary experiences with the Avatamsaka, the Golden Flower Sutra. I mean, the Golden was the Sutra of the.
Or the Net of Indra, sorry.
Oh, the Net of Indra. Net of Indra. Well, most people haven't contemplated it enough. Flower Ornament Sutra. I get it mixed up sometimes with the Secret of the Golden Flower. Flower Ornament Sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra. Translated in 1986. I wish I had a copy to show people. I'll do it some other time. Yeah, people have all kinds of spills and chills and thrills on the way, right?
Yeah.
Usually those are just. Go ahead.
And I guess that they're nothing big to give too much thought or attention to, right?
Well, don't get hung up on them. Keep going, right? I mean, it may mean that things are shaking loose, right? Or maybe they're rattling loose, but you keep going. That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a separate question. In Buddhism, we hear about sentient beings. What does that term encompass?
In Buddhism, I think in Tibetan Buddhism, which is the one that I'm more familiar with, it refers to beings that are conscious. A sentience, consciousness, and with a small c, consciousness with a big C, self-awareness, all these things get conflated and mixed up and jumbled. It's a Wittgensteinian mess, right? Wittgenstein. Yeah. So people are using language, but they're not communicating because they mix all those things all together. And consciousness means something very, very specific, very, very, very specific. And it's not thoughts, and it's not self-awareness, and it's not ability to solve problems or to... it's not like Ramana Maharshi and so many other Indian sages have pointed out, it's easier to define by, not define. It's more fruitful for most people to just figure out what's not consciousness to get to consciousness, or what's not self to get to self, using their terminology, right? Which is basically completely the opposite of Christianity or Islam, where you want to not annihilate. You want to put this. You do war with the self in order to conquer it, right? But that's the false self, the commanding self, the artificially superficial acquired self. And so what people East and West have all found over the ages, all of them, is that underneath that there's an essence of man, which is consciousness. And this consciousness is shared with other creatures.
Mm-hmm. Other animals?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's not like a consciousness and let's say, and I'm thinking about like the mirror test when all these scientists
that's cognition. That's frontal cortex.
Cognition versus consciousness.
Yeah, that's cognition. That's more thought. So recognizing self, machine can do that. I mean, I don't know if they can yet, but they will have to be able to. Yeah, they probably can, or they're close to it. That's not consciousness.
Yeah. So, for example, and just for me to say that out loud, like a dolphin might have the cognition to recognize that we marked its genitals with an X in a mirror.
Right. It probably would notice. Yeah, I wouldn't do that, but okay. Yeah, it would probably notice that.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it has consciousness in the way that we do, and that way that we're.
Well, no. It just means that it has that other capacity. Just because we share. Okay, consciousness is a completely different question than mentation, language, ideas, concepts, constructs. Totally different question. And people these days are confusing it, and partly because they want AIs to be conscious so bad. But there's nothing that suggests that a current AI technology is going to get conscious unless we hybridize it with a sentient being or a piece of tissue, conceivably, a piece of the brain. I mean, you can see hooking it up to the limbic system here, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a machine with desires and fears and hopes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we should think twice before doing that, but it can be done. Mm-hmm. In principle. Mm-hmm. But now we're talking cyborg.
Yeah.
Or cyborg monkey or whatever. You do it with a monkey, do it with a dolphin. You can do it with a lot of things. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's very wise. And just like we're able to we've banned cloning humans, right? That's a no-no. Mm-hmm. We may want to think about doing that with banning human-machine hybrids of a certain sort. Mm-hmm. Okay, any more? A few more questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, I got just two more questions.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. First question. I believe I heard you say before that like right action or like kind of like knowing what the right thing to do is, and this is kind of like in the sense of a distinction between healthy and unhealthy. I think you put it in this way where right action has nothing to do with morality when you can recognize truth. And I kind of interpret it as this, in truth, there's beauty and light, and people who have received this teaching of truth are aware of its existence, and because of that, they try to align themselves to that, versus this kind of external or divine morality taught down by the Ten Commandments or something like that. It's something more, I guess it's more of a Buddhist thought.
Okay. every religion, you're right, has its morality and has its
Yeah.
its basic, tenets of behavior, and those are important, because for social reasons, right? Not necessarily for the reasons of truth. Morality becomes a very problematic. It becomes a difficult construct when we're talking about in absolutes. All right, it's a very difficult thing actually, and you can construct all kinds of thought experiments where morality becomes a kind of a not the right word. The people who are most expert at this are the Sufis, the esoteric Muslims. Although they aren't Muslim, I mean, Sufism. If you ask a real Sufi, Sufism existed before Islam, and it existed, and it existed in. So I'll just leave it at that. It existed before Islam, and furthermore, they'd say that it's not an exclusionary type of thing, but its most recent iteration has been Islamic, right? And so that again, that's a huge topic, and one that requires a lot of development before anyone should go around talking about morals in this endeavor, right? So let's leave that one to the side for now, and that requires quite a bit of self-development, cultivation, understanding, learning, things like that. Or not. If you operate from a place of consciousness, you just do the right thing, right? You're not able to do anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. This is on the tweet of, if love is the opposite of, from J. Krishnamurti, if love is the opposite of hate, it is not love. If peace is the opposite of violence, it is no longer peace. Would it be fair to say that within the context of this saying or this phrase, that love is the absence of hate rather than the opposite of?
You could say that, but shouldn't we go to what Krishnamurti means by his statement?
Yeah, what does he mean? I'm trying to understand.
Well, love and hate. What are the two dichotomies he mentions? Love and hate, and what?
Peace and violence.
Peace and violence. See, okay. So what he's pointing out is that our brains, our minds, these guys over here, right, up here, they think in terms of black and white, in opposites, in dichotomies. And we know from studies, depth studies, that opposites work together. And also everything's not everything. Things are on a spectrum, right? And also, but another point is that love has no opposite, right? If you know love, if you know real love, which is the same as consciousness, which is the same as God, which is the same as truth and beauty, which sounds very, very strange, but anybody who knows it knows that that's the case, then it has no opposite, right? And so he's pointing out that how many centuries are we going to go through this shallow, superficial, love, hate, right, wrong, I'm good, you're bad, this is true, that's false, and although all of those may have their place, there comes a point where we as a species need to evolve above just thinking in terms of opposites and dichotomies. And then maybe we can talk about love. And then maybe we can talk about peace. But everything else is just an imitation, and it's not going to last, I guess is his point. Or maybe that may not be his point, but that's my point. It won't last. Only love, right, with a capital L endures.
Right. Yeah, this is just a pendulum here on the dichotomy.
Something like that, yeah. Okay, sir?
Right. All right. Thank you, Dr. A.
Okay, take good care. Guard your mind. The AIs are coming.